G'day, it's Geoff Lewis here from Seriously Series. Now today this video is actually really quite special and really quite unique. This is the first video that we've produced exclusively for Patreon. It will be released in a few weeks' time on YouTube. But what we're actually going to be looking at here today is what goes on behind the scenes. And there's a heck of a lot that has been happening behind the scenes here at Seriously Series. Now, many of you have probably noticed that there's a camouflage vehicle behind me, and you're spot on. What this video is going to be about is going to be looking at the workshop here where I'm working on a number of Land Rover vehicles for a big upcoming project. And I'm going to be showing you some of the adaptations and some of the projects and the alterations that we've got on the go over the next few months. Damon will be looking at doing another video as he's got a number of projects on the go for Seriously Series in Tasmania too, and that will come out at a later date. But for now, sit back and relax as I show you what we've got installed here at Seriously Series in WA. Okay, so I'm trying to keep the camera pretty mobile here. So you can see the Parenti here behind me. Now, I've done a video on this, episode 3 of Unique 4x4, covering the Land Rover Parenti FFR. There's a lot of different variants of this vehicle, but this one in particular I'm quite a fan of. Now, the difficult thing is we need a support vehicle. We used a support vehicle. Just put the camera down while I have a chat to you about this. So we need a support vehicle. On our last trip that we did on the Canning stock route, Stevie came along with us, and he very kindly, lent to us or brought to the aid of us, the situation that we needed, and he actually used his vehicle as a support vehicle, which was very good of him, and it did a fantastic job. The Defender Puma is a really formidable off-road piece of kit. But one of the things that we found was that Stevie had a dual battery system in his car. We had a dual battery system in the Parenti, in the Series 3, getting a bit fixated on Parentis, and basically the dual battery systems in each vehicle weren't quite sufficient to be able to charge everything we needed at one given time, which was usually at the end of the day when we rocked up at camp. So this meant that we had to, Damon had to very carefully make sure what he charged throughout the day and when he could use the particular cameras and particular, equipment such as the drone and all the rest. So it was a little bit limiting. Now, the FFR Parenti behind me, obviously being an FFR, has a bit of a party trick. It's obviously got a 24 volt system and it's got a 12 volt system in it too, which I've covered in the video I mentioned earlier. So this means that we've got the ability to generate a heck of a lot of electricity and to be able to have that ability to be able to charge whatever we want, whenever we want. And that is certainly something that the Parenti has got as an advantage. Now, travelling through any remote area, there's always safety in numbers. So if we did go on a future trip, we would want another vehicle like a Defender Puma or what else with us too. It's just a better option to have. But anyway, we'll get up a bit closer. I'll take you off the tripod and I'll show you some of the stuff that we've been doing to the Parenti over the last few weeks, and it's nearly been a month now, but these things are all worthwhile doing. Anyway, I'll take you off the tripod. Right. Now, I'm no cameraman, so it might be a little bit shaky, and I do apologise for that. I'll try and keep it the best I can. But anyway, getting on with the show. So I'll just flip you around. So the problem that we've got here is we've got an ex-military Australian vehicle. Probably not the best way to put it, but it's ex-army. They produced, I believe, 2,500 of these, and basically what I want to do is obviously make sure that it fits what we're after in regards to a support vehicle and also a vehicle that we can use for purposes of charging our batteries, and also as a camera vehicle too. So I don't want to actually go about actually cutting up the vehicle. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to tastefully modify the vehicle. Now the first thing that I've done is, as you can see here, I've fitted it with camouflage seat covers, courtesy of Robco in New South Wales, which I purchased. These Robco actually, I believe, still has or had the contract for the Australian Army to actually produce the canvas canopy and all the canvas components that are required in the vehicle. They can do a FFR canopy and they can do a GS canopy. There is a difference. Particularly here, you've got this silver reflective material on it. I believe you don't get that with a GS. Also, you've got little ports or little flaps that come up here, so you can actually pull the wire out to put onto your antenna for your HF radio set, which they would have used the 77 and then the Raven set. One of the issues, just thinking of how to go through what we're doing with the vehicle, but as you can see, there's nuts and bolts everywhere. One of the things that we're actually doing to the vehicle now is I've pulled the fuel tank out. The fuel tank actually got hit by a large stick when I was using this out in the Great Victorian Desert, and basically it got damaged. So the fuel tank's there. I've put an epoxy kit actually in the fuel tank, but sadly it didn't cover the whole inside of the tank. So I've actually had to source another fuel tank from the UK. So I'll just put you back on the tripod and fill you in on a few other details. Move you up over here. So obviously, as I said, one of the issues is how do we actually modify this vehicle to what we want to use it for? Now, the first thing would be to go and get a grinder and to just cut off and do whatever we wanted to the vehicle itself. I could not sleep at night if I did that. I could not sleep at night. We need to honour the legacy of this vehicle, and I believe we need to do it tastefully. So one of the things that we could easily do is pull the 24 volt system out of this car. I'm against that. I think that is a really, really cool feature of this car, and I believe that needs to be preserved. So what I've actually looked into, and it's courtesy of Ben Broder once again at Goldfields Off-Road, he's sort of pointed me in the right direction with this, as I'm no auto sparky, never have been, never claim to be. But he's said that we can potentially use the 24 volt system. The ARB fridge that I run can run on 12 volt or 24 volt. So we'll just run it on 24. We'll probably look at upgrading having two fridges, so we'll probably have something like a 60 litre and a 35. The 35 we'll use as a freezer, the 60 we'll use as a fridge. Now, many of you might think, wow, that's a bit over the top. Well, if you're away for 4 weeks, you haven't got access to any kind of food supply, then that's really what you need to do. And that's pretty much what we did for the Canning stock route. So that's what we'll probably fit out the vehicle with. Now, it can fit 4 24 volt batteries, deep cycle either side, or just regular 24 volt batteries either side. The other option is, and something that I've looked at, is a winch for the vehicle. Now, we can obviously go with the traditional aspect, which I would prefer to go for, and that is actually go for a PTO derived winch. Now, the problem with that is I can get the PTO unit, not a problem. That's easy. I can get the winch, not a problem. It's the shafts. Now, people say, oh, you can make the shafts. The shafts are very easy to make. It's the universal joints and the casting. That's what I can't make. And that's what I simply don't have the time to do. I'd love to be able to do that, but just getting everything ready as it is enough. So you've got to be realistic for what you can actually achieve. A few hours each night. So what we'll probably look at doing is potentially maybe fitting the vehicle out with a electronic winch, a winch that can be also run on 24 volts. So potentially one bank of batteries will be designated for the winch or some system of that nature. The other two batteries on the other side will be designated for fridge and charging and lighting and all the rest. So that's sort of what we've got in mind for the actual electrics of the vehicle itself. Now, the other thing is tyres. Now, the standard tyre that everyone knows and loves, the tyre size for the Land Rover is typically the 750 by 16 inch. Now, obviously these started off as a rag tyre, and then with the Land Rover Parentes, one of the key things that they stipulated in the development of the vehicle was that it would run radial 750 by 16 inch tyres. Now, many people are very skeptical when it comes to rag tyres or cross-ply tyres. They don't handle well at high speed, that's right, they don't dissipate the heat, and that's because they're a very thick tyre. But their off-road capability in a desert environment where you've got lots of sharp sticks, stumps, and obviously rocks. Now, the reason why the rocks are so sharp in a desert environment is because you don't have the rainfall. So the rocks don't move from the top of the escarpment down to the bottom with any great speed. So it means that the actual rocks don't actually get the jagged edges actually knocked off, as you'd find in a riverbed with a nice rounded river pebble. You don't get that effect. So it's a terrain that's very hard, very taxing upon your tyres. So this is something where the cross-ply is actually quite good at, and a lot of people in this part of the world still run cross-ply tyres, particularly of MRF. The problem with the cross-ply tyre too, as I've said, doesn't dissipate the heat, but the other issue is it uses nylon strands inside the actual construction. Now, when you deflate the tyre, these rub together, and nylon, you don't have to be a engineer or chemist or anything to work this out. Nylon is not as strong as steel. So the nylon cords actually rub together, they break. Then when you go on the highway, you pump them up to 40 psi, you get a blowout. That's not the reason, but it's one of the reasons why you have issues with cross-ply tyres. I found that the 750 by 16 inch radial tyres are very, very good. Having steel banding inside the actual tyre themselves, you can run them down to really low pressures, pump them back up, and you don't have this issue with blowouts. Obviously the speed rating on them too is much, much greater. Even though this vehicle sits quite happily on about 95 kilometres per hour, which would be probably round about 60 mile an hour mark, just off the top of my head. So with that in mind, what we're looking at actually fitting the tyre out with, what we're actually looking at fitting the vehicle out with, it's been a bit of a long day, is going for the 235/85 open country mud terrain. Now, for those of you who followed our channel, you'll know that we're a big fan of this actual tyre size. It gives us a good width, which width does actually have a part to play in regards to your tyre, though a lot of people will disagree with that. But you don't want something that's ridiculously wide. It's not very good in a hot environment, and I'll cover this in another video. So we're going to go with the 235/85 as the size. The tyre itself will go with the open country Toyo tyre mud terrains, which we've used in the past, which we've used on our short wheelbase Series 3 on the Canning stock route, and we've also used on the 109-inch long wheelbase that we've used in Edge of the Earth, which part 2 is coming out. Will be shot in June and should come out in July sometime too. So that's what will actually fit onto the vehicle itself. Now, the front of the vehicle, and I'll take you down and I'll show you around that, what's actually going on there. It's quite different. I've talked about the actual engineering and the actual strength of the engineering of components, particularly for Land Rover, in the origin of the four-wheel drive video, first episode of the Origin series. And what I found in my experience, the diff housing is actually much thinner in the Land Rover compared to its counterparts, such as the Patrol and Land Cruiser, which are probably one of the two dominant vehicles here in Australia. With that in mind, one of the key problems that's actually faced by the Land Rover is if you're actually driving off-road and you're a bit complacent, you hit a rock, it actually has the ability to be able to do significant damage to your diff housing. It will do it to a Patrol and a Land Cruiser, but you have to be going a lot faster and you have to hit a rock a heck of a lot harder in order for it to do that. So when I picked up this vehicle, it actually had a slight ding in the front pumpkin, or the actual centre diff on the front axle assembly. And when I did the Holland track, I hit a couple of ruts, and this actually made it a lot worse, to the point where the crown wheel was actually starting to rub on the diff housing. So what I'm looking at doing is actually pulling the swivel housings off each side, because this is the quickest way to do it. So you clamp the brake lines, you take the bolts off around the actual flange, you pull the whole axle assembly out one side, the whole axle assembly out the other side, and then you've got the actual diff casting. You take the diff out itself, take the actual diff housing out, and I would love to be able to knock it out myself, but once again it's a time issue, so I'll be taking it down to Adam at I think it's AL Welding and Boiler Making, and he's the one who does all the welding work for us here in WA, and he'll knock it out. So we'll do that. So yeah, I'll show you around there, and we'll move to the back of the vehicle, and I'll show you some of the adaptations that we're looking at actually fitting to the vehicle there. And there's the culprit. I've seen worse, but it's certainly not good. So we'll get that knocked out the best we can, and moving on in the future, I'll be putting a diff protector on it. Obviously I'll paint it matte black to fit the vehicle. So it's a lot of work to be able to just knock it out, so I really do recommend running diff protectors, particularly on the front. So as you can see, it's got a pretty bad ding in the front of it. So we'll get that knocked out and everything should be good there. Put a few new shocks in the front of it too. And just something to touch on too. If you are looking at buying a Parenti or you own one, the biggest problem with these vehicles isn't necessarily reliability. They're actually quite a reliable vehicle. The issue is time. Now, this vehicle, when I bought it, had 110,000 Ks on the clock since new, and that's verified. I've looked at in the logbook, and I've done 40,000 Ks in the vehicle over 3 years, which isn't a huge amount, but it's still substantial. Because it hasn't done that many Ks over the period of its life, it means that a lot of stuff has perished, particularly the rear shocky bushes, or lower shock mount bushes, have actually perished a bit too. So we'll be taking them off and we'll be replacing them too. We'll be double checking the shock absorbers to see if they're actually okay also, because it's something that you really don't want to have happen to you out in the bush and the actual shocks fail. Some people may say it's probably better off replacing them, but you know, if you know what you're doing and you're able to double check and sort of see the condition and also check the serial number and find out the age of the shock absorber, that gives you a pretty good indication whether you want to replace them or not. Now, the other stuff that we'll probably look at fitting to the vehicle, particularly here in Western Australia where it gets quite hot, is obviously along the roof rack here, we'll put a few brackets on it. Nothing too obtrusive, but we'll make it, sorry, just a couple of tools on the ground, but we'll make sure that it actually sits out to probably about here. On here we'll put a awning right across the top. We'll make it the same length as the roof rack. I really don't see the point in putting an awning on that's longer than your roof rack. That's just inviting for trees and branches and all the rest to get caught in it. Yes, they'll get caught in it anyway, but if you have something up here on your roof rack on the front of it, that's going to take the brunt of it. So that's my train of thought there. So we'll put that on there. Obviously the vehicle's fitted out with Lucas Electrics, or British Electrics. Prince of Darkness, as people call it. So what we'll look at doing is putting some spotlights on the front. Now there's two ways that we can actually go with this. We can try and be a little bit of a purist and keep with a more of a sort of a conventional style of spotlights or driving lights to go on the front, or we can go for the LED option. Obviously I'm quite a fan of the ARB intensity lights. They're a very, very good light, very durable, very tough, and it's certainly something that we would consider putting on the vehicle, but we've got to evaluate a few things and find out what will work, what won't work too. So the overall drivetrain of the vehicle, obviously we're going to fix the diff at the front as I mentioned, but we're probably not going to change anything. That's right, we're probably not going to look at putting a locker in the front and the rear. To be honest, lockers are one of those things. If you have them, they're fantastic, but you can get to a lot of places without having them, and you do have to go pretty extreme or be towing a very large load to warrant actually going down that road. That's from my experience. If you've experienced differently, please put a comment down below. But these are a very capable vehicle. The only issue that you have obviously is being open to front and rear, but you've got the center diff lock and that makes a big difference too. So the drivetrain will leave pretty much standard, and that's probably about it for the Prenti. Oh, the Speedo. Speedo's failed. Well, I can drive a kilometre and it won't do anything, and then it'll flick up to 80. So that's getting rebuilt in Perth at the moment. So that's what's happening with the Prenti. But we'll go outside and we'll have a look at some of the other projects on the go, because when you own a Land Rover, one project is just simply not enough. Okay, so what's in store for the Series 3 over the next few months? Well, obviously we've got to put the capstan winch back in. A few parts are currently being sourced for that. The main output seal and obviously the spring for the actual lever here has gone missing also. One of the things we'll be looking at also fitting to the vehicle is the ARB air lockers to the front and the rear of the vehicle. This has taken a little bit longer as I've had to source a number of unique parts to actually go into these lockers, particularly the spacer ring that you need for the crown wheel, I believe. The motor itself, a heck of a lot of work's going to have to go into that too. This vehicle's been not too bad, but it's required a bit more overhaul and maintenance than I actually first sort of realised when I bought the vehicle. I wanted a vehicle that was running and registered and just needed a bit of TLC. But the motor's pretty solid, but it is burning a little bit of oil. I've put a thicker oil in there, a 3070, which is a very thick viscosity oil, I know, and it seems to be running okay on that. I'll show you later I managed to pick up a few 2.25 litre petrol engines, and I've also got a block out of a 1975 Series 3 petrol too. So I'm hoping by using a 8:1 compression ratio head along with the Series 3 block that I've got, I should be able to rebuild one motor and actually put it in the car. rather than take the car off the road for 6 months. So I can still keep driving it round as it is. So that's probably the big thing that's actually going to happen with this vehicle this year. The other thing is that this vehicle, I believe, either has high ratio diffs or high ratio transfer case, and I might do a little bit of a video on how to actually find that out and diagnose it. The reason why I think this is so is because the speedo's out by about 20 kilometres. I can sit on 95 kilometres an hour on the highway, and the motor's not struggling. The reason why I want to change this is because the gearing's too high, the ratios are too great, and because of that, when I load the vehicle up, it's struggling to go any more than 60 or 45 miles an hour, and it's just painful. It is just painful, and it chews through the juice. It's working the motor too hard. These vehicles were never meant to go that fast in the first place. So I'm hoping to correct that, and I'm hoping to fit a Roma drive system to it. I don't know how it's going to go. It's going to be an interesting project either way. So that's what I'm looking at doing to this vehicle. So there's a heck of a lot of work that's going to go into this. I'll be sure to give you update videos on how this actually goes, and particularly doing a video on the capstan winch when it's in the vehicle too. But anyway, I'll take you around the back. We've got a few other interesting things to see. Okay, so behind me here is the Series 2, and I'll run through what we're actually going to be doing to that over the next couple months. So the Series 2 is pretty much the workhorse here for now, since the other vehicles all have a few things that need to be done to them. As you can notice, the rims aren't matching, and I'll get into that a little bit later on. What we'll probably be doing to this vehicle is not a heck of a lot. Probably fitting a roof rack to the top. The front swivel housings need to be seen to. They're developed over time. They actually develop ridges in the chrome, and that causes them to leak, so I'll be taking them off and getting them machined. All new wheel bearings all round will go into the vehicle too, and brand spanking new springs in the front and the rear of the vehicle too. So it'll help it sit a little bit better, as I took the heavy duty springs out of this vehicle and put it into the Series 3. So the springs in the Series 3 were okay for their age, but they've sagged a bit and I can't really carry much of a load in the back, so I decided to go for brand new springs, so it's going to be interesting. Anyway, that's pretty much all we've got in store for the Series 2. We're going to be doing a few more little adventures locally in this vehicle, so it's going to be appearing in a few more videos in 2019 and 2020, so watch this space. Rightio, so the next project that we've got on here, there's quite a bit, as you can tell. It's all fine, keeps me out of trouble. Is the number 5 trailer, which is here behind me. This is something that the Australian Army developed in 1960, I think it was 62 or 65, and the main production run of them was in 1966. So stand corrected. But anyway, I'll flip you around and we'll go for a bit of a walk around here and have a look. So here it is. Don't look at the white rim. I'm just trying out different tyres on it, and I'll get to that in a minute. So this trailer I picked up last year for about $1,100 Australian. I believe it was decommissioned out of the Army in 2009. It's in relatively good condition for its age, as you can see. It hasn't been tampered with either. So it's got the original pintle hook on it and chains. It's been fitted with drain plugs, which is a very handy feature. Particularly the earlier variants that I've seen
tend to rust quite badly along here. Bit of surface rust inside it, but overall for a 50-year-old trailer, I think it's pretty good. The hubs, you can obviously grease nipples either side, which is very handy. And the springs are quite cute, they're really quite small. The trailer is designed to carry half tonne, so 500 kilos. I'm not sure what that is in pounds. But everything seems to work on the trailer, which is really surprising. Bit of the wiring at the back's a little bit ratty, so I'll tidy that up, and the convoy light isn't working too, so I might get that going also. But this will be used behind the parental, and the key purpose for this, for the new doco that we might look at doing potentially, look at doing will be to carry the water, which I believe this trailer was, one of the purposes was to actually carry jerry cans, looking at the dimensions from here to here, by putting a plank of wood along here. You can put a row of jerrys here, and doing the same at the front, a row of jerrys here. So this will be really handy in that regards, and carrying any additional equipment that we require. Now the other thing that you've probably noticed is this isn't registered at the moment, so that's the thing that's got to happen for this. I've got to try and get it over the pits. I've had one go, and things have changed quite a bit here in Australia in regards to this. Well, sorry, they've changed in the last few years here in WA. It's not as easy to get these trailers and also military vehicles registered anymore. One of the issues is the tyres, and that's why there's a different rim on here. So this is the mudguard here, as you can see. I'll give you a top-down shot. The tyre sticks out probably about that much, which is about 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter. Because of that, the guard is not sufficient, even though these are the correct rims and the correct tyre that I've actually got on now. So technically, if we're playing by the book, I've got to get this cut off, and then I've got to get this extended out to here. I'm not happy about that because I don't want to actually cut up this trailer. The other thing that's happening, particularly with all these military trailers and vehicles coming out, is I've then got to go to the back of the trailer if we're playing by the book, and I've got to change all the lights because they're not happy about the light configuration. I've got an indicator there, brake light, indicator in there, reflector, and reflector there, but that's not good enough. So hopefully that's something I don't have to change, but it's been mentioned, so a bit annoyed about that too. But more so what I'm really annoyed about is the fact that I've got to change the guards, even though the tyres are the exact same tyres and the exact same rim that it came out with. Now this is a cross-ply tyre. I was just testing out the sidewalls because the radials tend to bulge a bit more. The cross-plies are straight. The original rim that it came out with is here, and the tyre too, and I have the exact same problem there also. So it's just a bit ridiculous, I believe. The other thing I've got to fit to it also is mud flaps, even though the trailer never had mud flaps. So that's something I've got to look at doing, and I don't want to really put them on if I don't have to, because it's just going to ruin the trailer. So I've got to find a way of putting them on without cutting up or disfiguring it too much. So that's the other project there. So It's not exactly straightforward, but it'll be a really, really handy piece of kit to be behind the Parenti. And very, very good off-road. Fantastic, because they've got the pintle coupling at the front here. And I'll do a more in-depth video on this on our unique 4x4 series. I know it's not a four-wheel drive, but it's just a trailer with a really unique and interesting history. So luckily the other day, well, a couple of weeks ago, I picked up a few gems. All these here. They don't look fantastic, but they've got the bits that I need. The jerry cans here are proper jerry cans. If you don't know what a proper jerry can is, watch the origin of the fuel can video that we've got on our channel, and I actually explain all the different types of jerry cans, how the jerry can was developed and all the rest, and you'll understand why these are proper jerry cans. These are 1951, 52, and I think there's a 53 in there. And they look pretty old and rusted, but it's just a bit of surface rust. I think it should be okay, and it'll work well with the 80-inch series one I've got. Swivel hub housing there. The chrome ball looks pretty good, so might be able to use that for something. Half a dozen prop shafts. The rim looked pretty okay, so they're always pretty hard to find sometimes, particularly out here in Kalgoorlie. And here we've got a 2.25 litre petrol engine. It's the later variant, as you can see, because of sorry, brain fart there. The oil filter. It's the shorter version compared to this one here, where you've got a monster oil filter here. So this is an earlier variant. So I believe this is a 3 bearing, this is a 5 bearing, and that's on the crankshaft. And then we've got another one here. So the goal is with these motors, particularly this one and that one there, they've been sitting outside for goodness knows how long, but hopefully out of those two motors, and with the block I've got for the Series 3, I can make one half decent motor, and that's going to be a really interesting project. It's something I've never done before.
Rightio, well I hope you've enjoyed this little video, little walk around of the workshop here of Seriously Series in WA, or what I like to call the Landy Cave. Anyway, I'll make sure that we do a few update videos along the way of how the Parenti here is faring, and obviously the Series 3 and the Series 2 and the number 5 trailer also. If you've enjoyed this video as always and you're watching this on Patreon, thank you very much for your support. Without your support, these videos simply aren't possible. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the video too, please click on the subscribe button below and please support us on Patreon. Watch this spot too, as Damon will be doing an update video on his projects, or the projects that he's working on for Seriously Series. In particular, his 1975 Land Rover Series 3 that we're going to be taking to the west coast of Tasmania in June of this year. Anyway, I'll catch you in our next video.